Hi! In this video I'll show you how to start up the Cessna 172 G1000. I'll show just the minimum steps needed to get the aircraft started for folks that just want to get going. I'll follow that by starting it up using the built-in checklist for the full sim experience. Unlike the 152's checklist, the 172's version is actually pretty complete. There's a few differences between starting the 172 versus the 152. There's also a bug in the aircraft you need to be aware of in order to start the engine. If you tried to start it and given up in the past and let the automated tools do it for you, it's most likely a result of this bug. The bug was most likely introduced in the Japan update. I've reported it, so I hope they fix it soon, although it's not the end of the world and we can work around it for the time being. If you want to start the 172 without going through all of the proper setup in the checklist, we'll do that now. To just start it up, the first thing we need to do is turn the fuel shutoff valve on. However, this is where the bug is at. The control is reversed in the sim. When it's open, it's actually closed and vice versa. So in order to start the 172, we need to make sure it's closed. This is it right here, and it defaults to close, so that's what we want. Next up, we set the throttle to about 20% or so. We leave the fuel mixture at 100%. Then we turn the standby battery on. And we turn the master battery and alternator switches to on. I like to have the beacon and strobe lights on as well, but that's up to you. Set the ignition switch to right mag, then left mag, then both mags, then start. And that's it. As you can see, the 172 is now started. TAC says we're running around 1170 RPM. At this point you want to drop the RPM to about 1000, so reduce the throttle down to about 10%. You can see we're at 970, so that's good. At this point you would turn on your avionics bus 1 and 2, make sure the elevator trim is set for takeoff, make sure the flaps are up. Then you'd release the parking brake and get your pushback if you need one and taxi on out. Okay, let's start fresh and use the checklist. One nice thing about using the checklist, as you'll see, is that it will familiarize you with the available controls in the cockpit as well as their locations. We'll start by turning off all the checklist and automation tools so they don't get in our way. If the automation is on, we'll engage ATC and get a pushback once the aircraft is started, and we don't want that for what we're going to do here. We also need a manual checklist. From the main menu, go to Options, then Assistance, then set Piloting to Hard, then Apply and Save. You can do this after you're in the aircraft. Just hit Escape to get to this screen and do the same steps there. In the tool menu in the sim itself, there's an AI control here, and these should be off. If you change these, they won't take effect unless you restart the flight, whereas if you use the regular options menu, they'll take effect immediately. You bring up the checklist from the sim's toolbar by clicking on the checkmark icon. If you see autocomplete page, evaluation, and autocomplete item at the bottom of the checklist, then the automation is turned on. You need to go into the assists and turn it off like we just did. Properly configured, you'll see tick item at the bottom of the checklist like this. In my other video about the Cessna 152, I go over the complete pre-flight for the outside of the aircraft, and that process is the same for a 172. So you can refer to that video if you want to understand that process, and the link is in the description. Okay, let's start the 172 properly using the checklist. First up is the pre-flight inspection for the cockpit. Our first item is the aircraft docks, which we can't do in the sim, but they've added it here for completeness, so just tick it as done. Now we have parking brake. Click on the eyeball icon on the right, and the sim moves the camera to the correct control and highlights it in blue. Make sure that it's set and tick it. Ignition should be off. It's behind the checklist. Just mouse over to see that it's off. It will say magneto set to right if it's set to off. Once verified, tick it on the checklist. Avionics switch bus 1 and 2 should be off. Confirm that. Set master battery and alternator switches to on and tick those. Make sure the Garmin PFD or primary flight display is on. This is the main display unit here. Next is fuel quantity indicators, and these are on the PFD. The eyeball will highlight that for us. These look good, so we tick those off. Now check that the low fuel right and left annunciators and check those as done. Next up is oil pressure, low vacuum annunciators, so verify they're on, tick them off the list. Turn the avionics bus 1 switch on and then listen for the forward fan noise. Once verified, turn bus 1 off and tick these items on the list. Repeat for bus 2. Then pitot heat on and verify it, and then off again and tick those as well. Verify the low voltage annunciator back up on our PFD and tick that. Turn the master switches off and tick those. Verify that the elevator trim is set for takeoff. Now ensure the fuel selector is set to both tanks and not just the right or left. Verify the static pressure alternate valve is turned off. This completes the pre-flight cockpit inspection. Now we move on to the before starting engine checklist. First up is the pre-flight, which we have already completed and certainly should have by this point on the real aircraft. Now we test and set the brakes and make sure the parking brake is still set. Make sure all the circuit breakers are pushed in. They don't actually do anything in the sim. This is just here for completeness. Make sure the avionics buses are both turned off. Ensure yet again that we have the fuel selector switch set to both and that the fuel shutoff valve is set to on, or in our case, because of the bug, make sure it's turned off. Otherwise, you'll be cranking the engine in vain. That completes the before engine starting checklist. For the starting engine checklist, we start things off by opening the throttle up 1/4 of an inch. About 20% will do. Ensure the fuel mixture is set to 0 or cutoff. Set the standby battery switch to test and hold it there for 20 seconds. Verify that the green light is still on and switch it to the on position and verify that the PFD comes on like this. Now verify that all of the engine indicators on the PFD are displaying. Verify the bus E volts are 24. Check that the bus M volts are 1.5 or less. 0 is what we have, so that's fine. The battery amps are showing a negative number indicating discharge, so that's correct. The standby battery annunciator is on. We turn to our left and shout clear out the window to warn anyone nearby that we're starting the engine and to exercise caution around us. Turn the alternator and battery master switches to on. Flip the beacon on. Set the mixture to rich. Oops, I forgot to tick the beacon there. Turn the aux fuel pump on for 3 to 5 seconds. This takes the place of priming the engine like we did in the 152. Now we'll lean the fuel mixture. About 30% should do the trick here. And get ready to hit the brakes if need be. Now turn the ignition switch from off to magneto right, magneto left, both magnetos, and finally to the start position. And the 172 fires up. Then tick the start item and set the mixture to rich. Tick that and the engine start checklist is complete. We can see we have about 1100 RPM and we'll need to drop that back slightly. On the next checklist, our first item is to do just that. Drop the throttle down to about 10% and now we're below 1000 RPM. Check the oil pressure is in the green. The M and S battery charge indicators are not showing negative numbers. There's no low voltage annunciator showing. Turn both of the avionics bus switches on. Verify the flaps are up, and you're ready to prepare for takeoff. Quite the set of steps here. All intended to ensure that you and your passengers experience the safest flight possible. Okay, that's it for this video. Hit the dislike if you didn't like it. Hit the like if you did so I can gauge how well the video did. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, take care.